It's Two Geek Soup once again. And again in the studio with me, I have my good friend Aaron Welty. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about Captain America Winter Soldier. And we'll have some guaranteed good news. And later on, Josh will join us for another segment of Understand a Random Fandom. Aaron, what's going on with you? How you been since the last time we had an episode here?
Hey, John, I'm doing pretty good. Kind of like you, I've been rewatching some of the Marvel films that I know that we're looking at talking about. I've seen the new Thor a few times, and I know that we've talked about the idea of doing a future episode, maybe a roundtable on that, so I'll save that for another time. But definitely excited to talk about Captain America Winter Soldier. It happens to be one of my favorite MCU films.
You know, I just watched it again, and I know we were both watching it yesterday in preparation for this podcast, simultaneously and independently of each other. We both took the time. I saw Aaron posting on Facebook about something that happened. It's like, hey, I'm watching it too. This is awesome. It is solid, isn't it? It's a great movie. Let's talk about a couple of other things first before we dive into that.
Okay.
Let's talk. I have taken the opportunity to watch a few episodes of the Inhumans show.
Yes, I have. I've actually, over the weekend, I actually finished the final episode of the show. So I've actually seen all 8 episodes.
So I'm not quite that far. I have gotten to. I think I'm in the middle of episode 4, or maybe I'm in episode 5. I can't remember. It's the one where they have the what, Mortis, is that his name?
Yes, Mortis.
Yeah, that's episode 4, I think, right?
Okay, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I haven't quite gotten through that yet. You know, I'm kind of struggling with it, and maybe it finds its feet and gets a little bit better towards the end. But at this point, I'm iffy on it. It's certainly not as good as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think we probably should be able to agree on that.
Yeah, no, I would say that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is definitely better than Inhumans is. I would also say that the 2 seasons that we were given of Agent Carter are far better than
easily
Inhumans currently is.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, I have enjoyed watching it because it's not a cast of characters that I'm intimately familiar with like some of the others, and I think it's, even though I normally don't fall into this category, it's one of those scenarios where if you're not intimately familiar with these characters and what their story arcs are like and how they typically go, you can just kind of come at it and enjoy it for what it is. I mean, I actually saw the 2-part pilot episode. I went to a local IMAX here in the D.C. area and saw it on the biggest screen I could, just because I thought it'd be something fun to do.
You know,
a couple weeks.
Yeah, when I started watching the first couple episodes, like the opening shots, I could tell. I was like, oh, here are the money shot, IMAX shots, right? Because it's very, very pretty. It's like the slow motion. You can tell, I was watching it on a fairly small screen, a very small television, like not on a mobile device, but still a relatively small television. And I could tell this is intended to be presented on a very large scale with really high definition, and I'm sure it would be very, very pretty.
It was.
Honestly, like that, it just sort of left me. It didn't serve the story for it to be shot like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, And to be perfectly honest, the quality of those opening shots is sort of at variance with the quality of the rest of it, because not even the rest of the first couple episodes are as pretty as that opening sequence.
Right.
And it just sort of the artifice of it was so clear that it for me it just absolutely failed to impress me. And the way that the story is shaking out. See, here's my thing with the Inhumans. Like, and especially if you're going to focus on the royal family of the Inhumans,
right,
then I think you need a much bigger story than what they're presenting in this show. It should be, I feel like it should be a cosmic thing and not an Earthbound thing, because we've seen the situation of Earthbound Inhumans on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I'm not really interested in seeing that same story from the perspective of these other characters that are much larger than life than the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters. Those are much more grounded characters than the Inhuman royal family. Like, these are creations of Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, right? Like, this needs to be big and bombastic and cosmic and embrace all of that craziness that was part and parcel of where they were in the comics when they were created.
I think that they try to do a little bit of that with the fact that, it's based in the city of Adelan on the moon, and that's something that we've never necessarily seen.
Yeah, and the way that was realized was
before.
Kind of interesting. I was looking forward to seeing how they were going to play that, if they were going to make it a hidden city on Earth or if they were literally going to be on the moon. And I'm glad that they stayed true to that part of the mythos, because the blue area of the moon, I don't know if they ever actually refer to it by that name in the show, because I'm only about halfway in, but that's a huge location that has been the host of many sort of pivotal moments in the Marvel comics. That's where the X-Men faced off against the Shi'ar Imperial Guard during the Dark Phoenix saga. And that's where the Watcher usually is hanging out.
Yeah.
And so you got so that's a cool location. I think they've just sort of made it only Atalan, and that pronunciation kind of bothers me too, because in my head it was always Attilan.
Ah, okay. I never would have.
That's a small quibble.
Yeah, I never would have thought of it that way. I think the thing that really that drew me in, and maybe this is just me, is at least in the first two episodes. I mean, it kind of bears itself out and tries to resolve itself over the course of the season, but just this, you get a little bit of this almost Paradise Lost-ish vibe, where... Yeah,
you mentioned that to me off mic, and I see that, and you mentioned it to me actually before I started watching it, so I was kind of looking for it, and I see your point, and that's an interesting, parallel to bring in. Go ahead and tease that out for us a little bit.
Well, it's just, I mean, without getting into it too much, the fact that in the first couple of episodes, the younger brother in the royal family, Maximus, who when he went through Terrigenesis, did not necessarily develop the kind of capacity that Inhumans, the kind of sort of X-Men-ish superpower or ability that the Inhumans tend to be known for, and that always kind of, even though he was still part of the royal family, it always kind of put him at odds and kind of on the outs, and he's in a place where obviously he's jealous of his older brother who's king, who not only is he king, but is married to this woman that you kind of find out used to be really good friends with the younger brother. And then, of all things, this younger brother, his name is Maximus. And if you say to me, as somebody who enjoys movies, the name Maximus, I immediately think of Russell Crowe in Gladiator.
Yeah.
And without having a ton of context on the royal family of the Inhumans, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be interesting, but why is he giving off this jealous brother, almost Loki-esque villain vibe? And then, as happens often in other stories, like in Lord of the Rings, you have essentially the weaker kind of usurper come in and claim power and steal the throne, and the rest of the story is the rightful king trying to reclaim the throne from the usurper. And even kind of in the Paradise Lost vibe and tone, depending on what one's theology is. It even has some Christian theological undertones to it too. And so I was seeing all of this as I was watching these first two episodes in IMAX, and I thought it's going to be really interesting, at least for me, as somebody who does a lot of crossover with those kind of things, to kind of see how this plays itself out. Having watched all of them, does it resolve itself? Yes, it does. Does it, resolve itself in a way where I kind of wonder, what might happen next? I can't necessarily say, one way or the other. What I will say is that with the familiarity I have with these characters at this point, I'd be much more curious to dive into some of the comics. But the flip side of that is, in diving into these comics and likely falling in love with these characters on the page, is it going to put a sour taste in my mouth in terms of how I saw them portrayed on screen? And in a lot of cases, when it comes to other superhero characters, that tends to happen, to a degree. So I'm kind of steeling myself for that, because not only do you have that with Inhumans, you have that possibility with the upcoming Hulu Runaway series that we've talked about a little bit in the past. That's coming in a week or two.
Yeah, I'm way more optimistic about the Runaways series. I am super looking forward to that, because that was such a great comic, and the trailers look to me like they're going to get that a lot more right than they got the Inhumans. Now, I haven't seen any of the promotional material for Punisher yet. Can you tell us anything about that?
There have been a couple of trailers that have come out, and I've watched them, and I definitely think you're going to get a continuation of the vibe that you got of John Bernthal's Punisher and Daredevil season 2. I'm actually rather excited that Karen Page is going to be featured in the series.
Oh, that is cool.
I'm probably going to come at the series a little more gingerly than others. Because Frank Castle has never been one of my favorite characters, and number two, I'm pretty sure that this series is going to push the boundaries in terms of what we've seen in the Netflix universe, in terms of how grisly and violent
I'd be surprised.
The shows can be.
I'd be surprised if it doesn't do that. Yeah.
So will I watch it? Yes. Are there going to be parts of it that are going to be tough for me? Kind of like Jessica Jones was, but whereas Jessica Jones was more like psychological in how it was tough.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the case with Punisher in more of like a physical, violent way. But I trust it.